I was 7 the first time I realized my parents weren't like other parents. Other kids went to bed with bedtime stories and gentle kisses. I went to bed with blaring music shaking the walls, music that rattled my ribs and made my skull throb. "Stay awake, Jason," my father Mitchell would command, his arms crossed as he leaned against the doorframe. "If you're tired, find a way to stay up. Life doesn't give you breaks." I tried. I really did. But my small body wasn't built to function without rest. My head would bob, my eyelids too heavy to fight. And then came the punishment. A splash of cold water. A stinging slap to my leg. The music would go louder. I'd wake up shivering, my body trembling from exhaustion, the edges of my vision swimming with black spots. When I was 10, they introduced another lesson, hunger. "If you don't find a way to eat, you don't deserve to," my mother Evelyn would say coldly, slamming the fridge shut as I reached for food. First, I thought it was a test. That by dinner time they'd let me eat. They didn't. First day, my stomach growled so hard it hurt. The second day, I discovered stale crackers in the neighbor's trash could be edible. The third day, I learned a bakery nearby threw out unsold bread at night. That lesson stayed with me. Survival isn't about pride, it's about knowing where to look. By 14, I had learned my lessons well. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. It was late in the afternoon when my father's truck pulled into a dirt road off a highway, stopping at a rundown motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and cigarette-stained carpets. "This is where we part ways, Jason," Mitchell said, pulling the keys from the ignition. My mother sat silently, staring out the window like none of this was happening. I laughed uneasily. "Good one." My father turned in his seat, his face unreadable. "Not a joke." Panic clawed at my throat. "You're leaving me here?" "We've given you enough," Evelyn said flatly. "Time to figure things out for yourself." I stared at them, these people who were supposed to protect me, love me. I searched for a flicker of remorse in their eyes. Something that said this was just another cruel test. But all I saw was indifference. Mitchell tossed a crumpled $20 bill into my lap. "That should cover a night," he muttered, stepping out of the truck. I scrambled in a panic. "Wait. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?" "Figure it out," my mother finally replied, her tone like ice. "That's the point." I lunged for the door handle, but Mitchell grabbed my wrist with an iron grip. "No coming back," he warned. "We're done." And then they were gone. I stood frozen, watching the taillights disappear down the road, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. I was alone. And this time, no one was coming to save me. The motel parking lot reeked of gasoline and damp asphalt. I stood there motionless, the crumpled bill digging into my sweaty palm. They were really gone. They had abandoned me like a stray dog. The neon motel sign flickered above my head, buzzing like an angry wasp. I stepped inside. My sneakers stuck slightly to the grimy linoleum. Behind the desk, a man barely looked up from his newspaper. "Rooms 20 a night," he mumbled. I hesitated. My fingers clenched tighter around the money. If I spent it now, what would I do tomorrow? "Do you have a phone?" My voice cracked. The man jerked his thumb toward a payphone in the corner. My hand shook as I picked up the receiver and dialed the only number I could think of, my Aunt Stephanie's. I hadn't seen her in years, not since she and my mother fell out. But I remembered one thing. She once hugged me tight and whispered, "If you ever need me, call." The phone rang twice. Then a groggy voice answered. "Hello? Do you have a phone?" My voice cracked. The man jerked a thumb toward the payphone in the corner. My hands trembled as I dialed the only number I could think of, my Aunt Rebecca's. I hadn't seen her in years, not since she and my mother had a falling out. But I remembered one thing. She once hugged me tightly and whispered, "If you ever need me, call." The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. "Hello? Aunt Rebecca," I gasped, my throat tightening. "It's Jason." There was silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "Jason? What's wrong?" "They left me," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Mom and Dad, they left me at a motel on Highway 16. A string of curses exploded from the other end. "Stay there." "I'm coming." The line went dead. I sank into the plastic chair beside the phone, my body shaking from exhaustion and hunger. Minutes stretched into an eternity before I heard the screech of tires outside. The motel door slammed open and there she was, Aunt Rebecca. Her hair was in a messy ponytail, eyes blazing with fury. She stormed toward me, gripping my face between her hands. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to stop the tears from spilling over. She pulled me into a fierce hug, murmuring, "Those monsters." Grabbing my bag, just a school backpack with a few clothes, I followed her to the car. As we drove, she ranted under her breath. "I always knew they were cruel, but this is a new level of evil," she muttered, shooting me a glance. "You're never going back there. Do you hear me?" I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. For the first time in my life, someone was on my side. By morning, Aunt Rebecca had already started the emancipation paperwork. My parents reported me missing, but she was ready for them. "Let them try to take you back," she said coldly as we left the courthouse. "Over my dead body." With her help, I finished school, went to college, and built a life far away from the people who had left me to rot. I became someone they never expected, someone successful. And I never looked back. Until 25 years later, when they came knocking on my door. I barely recognized them when they showed up at my office. Mitchell and Evelyn stood in the lobby, their faces tight with forced smiles. Age had softened their once commanding presence. Gray streaked my father's hair, and my mother's once proud posture had developed a slight stoop. But their eyes still held that cold calculation. "Jason," my mother breathed, her voice syrupy sweet. "It's been too long." I leaned against my desk, arms crossed. "Not long enough." A flicker of annoyance passed over my father's face, but he quickly masked it. "We're here because we need your help," he said. I said nothing. "Let them squirm." "We've had some financial trouble," my mother continued, pressing a hand to her chest as if the weight of their misfortune was too much to bear. "The bank is taking our house. We could lose everything." A humorless chuckle escaped me. "Everything? You mean the house you raised me in? The one you abandoned me from?" "Jason," my father snapped, "you wouldn't be where you are today without us. We taught you resilience. That success of yours? You owe it to us." I pushed off the desk and stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You dumped your child in a highway motel and never looked back. You didn't raise me, you discarded me. And now, after 25 years, you think you can waltz in here and demand a payout?" My mother's expression darkened. "We're still your parents," Evelyn said. "No," I replied, my voice cold. "You're strangers." My father's mask finally cracked. "You selfish little..." I pulled out my phone. "Say one more word and I'll have security escort you out." My mother exhaled shakily, switching tactics. "Please, Jason. We have nowhere else to go." I stared at them for a long moment. Then, with slow precision, I reached for my checkbook. They watched hungrily as I tore a slip from the pad. Then I ripped it in half. "Here's what you get," I said, letting the torn pieces flutter to the floor. Their gasps filled the silence as I pressed the intercom. "Security, escort these people out." The last thing I saw before the doors closed was their stunned, furious faces. They had come for money. Instead, they left with nothing. And soon I'd make sure they lost even more. I sat in my office, scrolling through the legal documents on my screen. The purchase was finalized. My parents' former home was now mine. I bought the house the moment the bank listed it for foreclosure. The same house where I had shivered through sleepless nights, endured starvation, and learned that love was just another word for control. It was mine now. And I had no intention of saving it. It wasn't about money, it was about justice. The same walls that had echoed with their cold-hearted lessons would soon crumble before the world's eyes. I had prepared everything meticulously. I compiled every document, every recorded conversation, and every witness statement detailing the torment they put me through, starving me, abandoning me, forcing me to fend for myself like a stray dog. I wrote down every insult, every cruel word they uttered during that meeting in my office. Then I sent it all in a single email to every relative who had ever dismissed my suffering. The subject line was simple: the truth about Mitchell and Evelyn. Within hours, my inbox exploded. Shocked responses. Condemnations. Disgust. No one was on their side now. The final blow came when a well-known celebrity blogger picked up the story. Soon, headlines spread like wildfire. Self-made tech CEO destroys his abusive parents' legacy. News outlets swarmed, eager to capture the spectacle. And the demolition? That would be public. The office door burst open. Mitchell and Evelyn stormed in again, their faces twisted with rage. "You planned this," Mitchell growled. "You set us up." I met his glare with icy calm. "No. You did. The day you left me in that motel, you wrote the ending to your own story." My mother's voice trembled. We made mistakes. But this? Destroying our home in front of the entire world." I turned my monitor to face them. The live feed from the demolition site showed a crowd gathering, journalists, bloggers, distant relatives who had once turned a blind eye. Cameras zoomed in on the wrecking ball, poised for its first devastating strike. Their panic was instant. "Stop it!" Evelyn shrieked. "You have to stop it." "No, I don't," I said, voice steady, unshaken. "You had your chance to make amends. Instead, you came here demanding more." I pressed a button on my keyboard. Inside, the machinery roared to life. Mitchell turned away from the screen, his breath ragged. "You're heartless," he whispered. "No," I said calmly. "I just learned from the best." A thunderous crash echoed through the speakers as the wrecking ball hit. The house, their house, collapsed in a cloud of dust and broken memories. Cameras caught every second. The world had seen the truth. And I walked away, leaving them to face what they had built. Nothing.